common mistakes in property investing, my journey, right? And I think the key focus is on my journey. I was actually thinking the other day that there are certain things in life, it doesn't matter what advice you're given, but the only way to learn is if you go through them yourself, right? And a classic example is umjolo, the pandemic, aka dating, right? It doesn't matter what your aunt tells you, what your sisters tell you, what the elder tell you. They can give you all the advice in the world. Don't do this, don't do that, but right? And the only way to learn really is to go through it yourself, right? You just become better in the process. But fortunately for you, there are also certain things where if you really invest the time and energy to actually understand and learn from other people's mistakes, you're able to save yourself a lot of time, a lot of energy, and more importantly, a lot of money. One of those things is property investing. Literally, all you have to do is surround yourself with people that are doing the same thing as you, right? So I've built connection with the Nong Wealth, and I am learning, guys, so much from them. Like, I will send them a text late at night, send them a VN. I'm in the situation, like, what do I do, right? So surround yourself with those people. Immerse yourself. Get as much knowledge as you can, right? So listen to podcasts on property investing. Read books on property investing. Attend workshops like this. So you guys are already on the right track, right? Listen to people's stories, and I promise you, if you do that and learn from other people's mistakes, as I said, you save yourself time, energy, and most importantly, a lot of money as well, right? And no one wants to lose money. No one at all wants to lose money. So I'm hoping that today you guys will learn from my journey, even laugh at some of the mistakes I made. You're more than welcome to. And I really want this to be more of a conversation, right? And I'm hoping that you'll have lots of questions to ask as well. So I always start with, I know our MC gave a brief introduction, but I think if you guys really get to know who this lady is talking in front of you, it's gonna help us connect a bit more on a personal level, right? And that's how I'd like to be with my audience. So, who am I? I started by mentioning that I am a black female, more specifically a proud black female. And I think as black females, we move differently in this world, right? Half the time, we're not seen, we're not heard, and we're not awarded the same opportunities as either our male counterparts or our white counterparts, right? And we literally have to fight for everything that we have. And actually, believe it or not, it was only in the 1970s that as a female, you were able to buy a property or apply for a home loan in South Africa without co-signing with a man, right? And now we live in an era where as a female, you're able to buy a property on your own, right? Apply for a home loan on your own. You don't need a man to do that. And it might seem like a small thing, but I think it's quite liberating. And sorry to all the men in here, but I love that for us. And I actually read a recent article that said in 2020, there were more female first-time home buyers compared to male, right? So females are literally, honestly doing the thing. So we are here. I'm also a chemical engineering graduate. And then last but not least, I am a property investor. Now, I put this last on the list for a reason, because for the longest time, I actually did not see myself as a property investor. And I think when I go through my journey, it's probably something that like most people can relate to, in the sense that you buy your first property, right, that you're living in, right? Not thinking forward and thinking of the future, that actually I'm not gonna live in this property for long, right? Chances are, especially if you're young, right? Chances are you'll probably get a new job, you'll have to relocate somewhere, you have to move out and end up renting that property, right? But because when you bought that property, it was probably an emotional decision, you were not thinking from a property investment landscape, right? And by the time I was 28, I found myself obviously changing jobs, relocating with 2 properties that I was renting out. And only then it hit me that, hey, you are receiving a rental income, right? You are a property investor. It doesn't matter if you're renting out the back room in your mother's house, whether you're building flats at the back, whether you bought commercial property in Sandton, the spectrum is wide. If you are receiving a rental income, and there are expenses associated with running that property, you are a property investor. And you better start treating yourself like one, right? So it took me a while to actually realize that and start treating myself like one and running this like an actual business, right? Where you're trying to make and maximize your profit. And then I just included a quote there that says 90% of all millionaires become so through owning real estate. And the real question is, if they can do it, why can't we? Yes. But you have to do it the right way. You have to do it the right way. All the points I'm going to mention today are very, very important. And I'll say this all the time, but I think this one is probably one of the most important points. And I've written here, master the art of negotiation when buying a property. Now, for both of the properties that I bought, I did not negotiate on the price of the property. Why, you ask? Number one, because I didn't know any better. Number two, I was under the impression that it's close to impossible to negotiate when you're buying directly from a developer compared to maybe a previous owner, right? Which is actually not true. There are circumstances where maybe the demand is very high in that area, and obviously people are flocking in, to buy the property. However, developers spend millions, right, building up these properties, and they want to get rid of them as quickly as possible, right? So you are doing yourself a disservice if you aren't negotiating on the price of the property you're buying. You always want to buy your property below market value. Guys, always buy your property. Why? You make the profit on your property when you buy. I mean, I was able to negotiate on other things like your interest rate with the bank, your initiation fees, but I think what would have saved me the most money in this journey is being able to negotiate on the price. The second one, always do your homework and crunch the numbers. As I mentioned, I think both of the properties I bought were driven by emotion, right? I was just looking for a nice place to stay, aesthetically pleasing, have my name on the title deed, etc. Not knowing that I'm not going to live here forever, right? Especially if you're young, guys. Eventually, you're going to have a family, need a bigger space. As I said, you might relocate to a different province. So whenever you buy a property, always think like a property investor, even though you're living in that current property, because you're not going to stay there forever, right? So it's very important to do your homework. It's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight, right? Understand the market. Is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? Understand the area where you're buying the property, right? Crunch the numbers. You literally need to open up a spreadsheet. There are so many metrics you can work out. I think I'll just mention two for the purpose of today. But the first one, probably cash flow, right? Understand that if I'm to rent out this property, what's the income that I'm receiving? What are some of the expenses associated with running this property? And what does my cash flow look like, right? Can I actually make a profit out of this property, right? Another important one is rental yield, right? What is that? That is your annual rent on the property divided by the purchase price of the property, right? And normally they say if you have a rental yield of between 7 to 8%, that already gives you an idea that this property actually might be profitable, right? But those are just two metrics. There's so many other metrics you can work out. Manage the risk on your property investment up front. I think I'll probably put this one to the floor, but can you guys, actually I want to start by saying that there are three things certain in this life. Three things. Number one, death. Number two, taxes. The third one, something will go wrong during your property investing journey. Definitely guaranteed 100%, right? There will always be inherent risks to consider, prepare for, and mitigate, right? I know most people always say that you don't need to have money to invest in property, which is true, right? Because you can obviously leverage the bank, take out a home loan. But you actually do need to have some money, right? Because how do you mitigate for some of these risks? You need to have an emergency fund, right? Because you take the cost on yourself when all these things happen, right? And I always say have between 3 to 6 months of the monthly rental price. So let's say if rent is 8,000 Rand, have 8,000 Rand times 6 in an emergency fund to be able to cover all these risks, right? So you do need to be comfortable and you do need to have money to be able to enjoy this property journey and be able to cover all these risks.